As you can imagine, in North Mississippi, it gets pretty hot here, and the rain's actually slowed down, so I've had to water my blueberries, and having 35 plants, that's quite a chore. I've had the stuff to do the irrigation for a while. I've just been too busy with projects in the shop, but have some time now to finally get it started and get it mulched, which is gonna help. I have a big pile of wood chips that I had dropped off, I don't know, like 2 months ago to mulch them, but time to get going on that. Here's what we have is the plan. So to minimize my water hose dragging, I've got 500 feet of 1/2-inch tubing. I've got some end caps here that I'm gonna put on the end of each row. We're gonna run 1 tube for each row. We've got some T's to do a main line, and then at each plant, I have these little pressure regulating dispensers that release 1 gallon of water per hour. My plan is to put 2 of these on each plant. So that way I'll be able to drop 2 gallons an hour, so I can turn this on for about 2 hours, get about 4 gallons on each plant whenever I need to do that. So, and to cut all this, just have a little flexible tubing cutter. So I guess we're gonna get cutting and laying it out. And I wanna do this under my mulching, so that way I can water underneath the mulching, which I think is gonna make the mulch more effective and conserve my water use. The end caps I'm using are actually a coupler that just has a cap. So the nice thing is, if I ever need to run off this system anymore, I want to tie off any of these lines, it'll be really easy. The little drippers I got are supposed to be self-piercing. They're kind of sharp, so I didn't bother getting the tool. So hopefully these little dudes actually poke in to the hose as easy as they're supposed to. All right, look at that, went right in. So as you can see, I'm trying to put 1 barb on each side of the plant just to help make sure the whole plant gets watered. And you might be wondering, why would you use these instead of just poking holes in the hose? Well, you definitely could. The problem is then the closer you are to the source of water, more water is going to come out of those because there's higher pressure. As you get farther away, there's less pressure. And so you might run into a situation where towards the end of your lines, you're not actually getting any water, and you're putting a lot more water up closer to where the water source is coming from than you want to. These are pressure regulating, so they balance that out. And you can look online, there's a bunch of tables and charts that show you for what size hose you have, how many gallons per minute that can flow, and then how many of these you can have off of that. So doing this, you make sure you're actually going to get all the water everywhere you think you are, whereas if you're just poking holes, it's kind of a guessing game. And if it's fairly short runs, it's probably not a big deal. But I've got 7 rows here, or 5 rows. Yeah, I've got 5 rows of 7 plants, and they're like 70 feet long each, so I'm gonna have a few hundred feet of tube. So I really wanna make sure I'm getting the water I think I am everywhere. So we got all the lines for the rows ran and all the barbs in, caps are on all the ends. Now we got a bunch of loose tails here. Time to do the main line that connects everything in. But my mulch is kind of in the way, so I'm gonna go ahead and move some mulch. And then I think I'm gonna go ahead and run my line now. Eventually I'm gonna trench it in and have it in the ground, but to, you know, save me a lot of watering, still think we'll go ahead and hook it up, drop it in the ground later. Many months later, there was a spigot here and a concrete pad that's now by my door. When I moved the pad, the spigot broke off at the base, so kept that, and that's the supply line we're going to use to run the irrigation to the blueberries and everything else over there. Of course, all that happening months ago, the hole filled in a little bit, so we're going to get this unfilled. I rented a trencher, we're going to get everything trenched in and start laying pipe. Okay, so need a break from the trenching. Got enough done that we can start showing how we're gonna tie in all this irrigation line. Really simple stuff. This is the last row, so I'm gonna use the T, or rather an elbow, that's gonna go down here, tie into the line. Then where I hit the next one, I'll use a T. So this comes, hits there. This will go out to the next row, keep going, blah, 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 all the way down. Where I need to connect to my main water supply, I've got this dude that has a thread on it. This is a garden hose adapter, but it'll work for the PEX because I got threaded adapters. And now that I think about it, if I was a smarter man, I would have went ahead and ran this line long before I trenched it. And then instead of watering all these plants this summer, I could have still just hooked my water hose up to this. But anyway, so I left all these a little long. All I'm gonna do to make sure I'm at the bottom of the trench for the most frost protection, I'm just gonna go to the bottom of the hole, get a little mark. Now I'll cut my piece right here, the appropriate length, and press my fitting on. Boom. And now it should run right at the bottom of my trench like I want. One of the nice things I like about the end pieces that I use that are also couplers is one of the things I'm going to do when I tie everything together is have a place to hook my air hose to this, so I can also pressurize this, cut off the water, pressurize the whole thing with air, then go to each line, pull out that plug and blow all the water out of it. So at the end of the season, really don't have to worry about frost at all. But yeah, let's get some line and measure off to the next one. Okay, so the way I'm connecting this all together, I have the T that has the garden hose adapter, and then this is a pressure regulator to make sure only 25 PSI goes through. And then I have a PEX to 3/4 NPT that just screws in here. I'll be saying, where's your Teflon or pipe dope? These have gaskets, so don't have to worry about that. If you're a belt and suspenders kind of guy, doesn't hurt to put it on. And boom, we're adapted. Now, if all I was doing was running from PEX to this one line, this would be adequate. But I'm going to have a line branching left and right to go off to where I'm going to have some black vineyard, basically blackberries and grapes and stuff. And then over on the other side is my garden patch where I often do melons and pumpkins and whatnot, and I want irrigation there. Unfortunately, in these PEX fittings, they don't make a 4-way, so I'm just going to use 2 T's. So we'll snap those on real quick. Okay, and here is my crazy manifold I've made. So the water supply that we trenched in is going to come in here. This is where I can hook up some air hose fittings to hook up my air hose, and I've got a cutoff valve here, so you can see at the end of the season I can cut off the water supply to everything, hook up air, blow out all my lines. Line going left, line going right, that'll be PEX, and then tie into the irrigation over there, mainly because this PEX line is a larger diameter than the irrigation, so I'll get better water flow if I run the 3/4 PEX over there than just try to tie off the irrigation stuff, though I reckon I could. And then of course up here I've got the pressure regulator and the T that'll then tie into all the blueberry stuff. The other nice thing is I trust the PEX and these fittings more than I do all the irrigation fittings. And so running PEX to everything and then kind of segregating my irrigation system. If I have any issues with irrigation fittings, then it's kind of limited to just those. And one of the things I'm going to do is on each line of these, they make these little barb-on valves. So you just clip them and then jam both ends in, and I'll put these on each line so then I can come up to each line and turn them on. And yeah, that's kind of what I got going on. So it's been a few weeks again since the last update. We've been working around the weather after we did all that. It rained, but got the rest of the trench filled in and a bunch of gravel put down to manage the mud, walking from the house to the shop, and everything's finally tied in. I'll show you what we ended up having to do here. So this blue line is what we were running. This side goes over to the new spigot we installed, and this runs down to all the irrigation. This is sort of my water main coming from my well, which is a 1-inch PVC. Unfortunately, they don't make a 1-inch PVC to 3/4 inch PEX. So what I had to do was adapt the 1-inch PVC to 1-inch PEX, bought a stick of 1-inch PEX, then went from 1-inch PEX to 3/4 inch PEX. If this was CPVC, it would fit into this fitting and have saved this adjustment, but they don't. So yeah, everything's all tied in, and we did this off camera because it's a pain with our well, the process for shutting off water and turning it back on. But it's all done now. And here's the spigot we installed as well. Kind of did this off camera since it was really more about the irrigation, but this was really easy. I just screwed an elbow into the bottom of it and then crimped it onto the PEX like everything else. The only thing was I had to do this little standoff, but I guess I didn't since I ended up turning this anyways. But yeah, so now I have a water spigot close to the barn again and my water beds, and that's it. Anyway, I hope you learned something, were inspired, or at least entertained. And until next time, make time to make something. I think we're gonna wrap this up with a little earth and dirt moving outro.